Someone else is taking this call, which is wonderful news for everybody involved. Someone else is taking this call, and I wish them the very best. The invitation arrived with urgency, importance, visibility, stakeholders, and several words capitalized for emphasis. Once upon a time, that would have been my responsibility. Today, it's a fascinating story about someone else's afternoon. The transfer of ownership has begun. Someone else is taking this call, which is wonderful news for everybody involved. Someone else is taking this call, and I wish them the very best. There will be questions, complications, unexpected developments, technical difficulties, action items, and at least one moment where somebody says, "Let's take that offline." The call will continue, the discussion will continue, the organization will continue. Without my attendance, a truly remarkable discovery. The world appears surprisingly self-sufficient. Someone else is taking this call. The agenda survives, the deadline survives, the objective survives, the PowerPoint survives. Everything seems to be working exactly as intended. The funny thing about leaving is realizing how often you believed things depended on you. Then one day you step aside and discover most systems were always bigger than any one person, including yourself. Someone else is taking this call, not because I wasn't useful, not because I didn't contribute, not because the work didn't matter. Someone else is taking this call because every role eventually becomes someone else's opportunity, and every ending creates room for a new beginning. Attendance status optional, conference call status not my circus.
That's above my pay grade, which is a professional way of saying I have observations, but not authority. That's above my pay grade. The problem is fascinating. The solution belongs to someone else. A decision was made somewhere by somebody with a title long enough to require 2 lines. In an email signature, the consequences arrive down here immediately. Of course, gravity works in every organization. That's above my pay grade, which is a professional way of saying I have observations, but not authority. That's above my pay grade. The problem is fascinating. The solution belongs to someone else. Would I like to improve the process? Absolutely. Would I like to redesign the system? Certainly. Would anyone like me to do that? Now we've discovered the importance responsibility rarely arrive together. That's above my pay grade. I understand the issue, I understand the impact, I understand the frustration. I understand far more than is useful without decision-making power. The funny thing about workplaces is that everyone believes the people above them have all the answers. Meanwhile, those people believe the people above them have all the answers. Eventually, you'll reach the top and discover everyone is improvising with varying degrees of confidence. That's above my pay grade. Not because I don't care, not because I'm avoiding responsibility, not because the problem isn't important. That's above my pay grade because wisdom includes knowing the difference between a problem you can solve and a problem you can only observe. Authority level limited, opinions available unlimited.
The out of office message is finally written. Short, professional, polite, and somehow more emotional than expected. The out of office message has become my farewell speech. I've written thousands of emails, status updates, project updates, weekly updates, quarterly updates, action items, meeting notes, and follow-ups. But this one feels different. This one has an ending. Some sentences carry more weight than others. The out of office message is finally written. Short, professional, polite, and somehow more emotional than expected. The out of office message has become my farewell speech. Thank you for reaching out. I am no longer with the company. For assistance, please contact someone else. It's a simple note, a practical note, a useful note, yet hidden inside those few lines is an entire chapter closing quietly. Big changes often sound ordinary. The out of office message, the projects are finished, the laptop is returned, the calendar is cleared, the badge is surrendered, and now the autoresponder tells the story. The funny thing about goodbyes is that most of them are smaller than people imagine. No dramatic music, no spotlight, no final speech, just one last email, one last wave, and life moving forward as it always does. The out of office message, not because the journey was perfect, not because every day was easy, not because I plan to stay forever. The out of office message, because every chapter deserves an ending, and every ending create space for something new to begin. Auto reply enabled. Next chapter loading. The password dies with me. Not intentionally, not maliciously, not as part of a larger strategy. The password dies with me because apparently I was the system. Documentation forgot. Years ago, someone needed access, a quick solution, a temporary fix, a practical shortcut, nothing permanent, nothing important, nothing that would matter in the future, which is exactly how important things begin. Temporary solutions have remarkable longevity. The password dies with me. Not intentionally, not maliciously, not as part of a larger strategy. The password dies with me because apparently I was the system. Documentation forgot. It saves somewhere, I think. Possibly a document, possibly a notebook, possibly an email, possibly a place that made perfect sense at the time. The confidence level has decreased over the years. Memory is not a backup system. The password dies with me. The account still exists, the process still exists, the software still exists, the needs still exist. Only the critical detail has become unexpectedly historical. The funny thing about expertise is discovering that organizations sometimes depend on a single person knowing a single thing nobody realized was important until the farewell lunch was already scheduled. The password dies with me, not because knowledge should be hidden, not because secrets create value, not because anyone planned this. The password dies with me because every workplace has invisible knowledge, quietly held together by people who assumed someone else knew it too. Security status concerning recovery process. Good luck. This is no longer my spreadsheet. The formulas remain, the tabs remain, the conditional formatting remains surprisingly aggressive. This is no longer my spreadsheet, and I cannot describe how relaxing that feels. For years I knew every cell, every formula, every hidden column, every questionable decision made during a deadline. 3 years ago that nobody remembers except me. And unfortunately the spreadsheet we survived together against all odds. This is no longer my spreadsheet. The formulas remain, the tabs remain, the conditional formatting remains surprisingly aggressive. This is no longer my spreadsheet, and I cannot describe how relaxing that feels. Someone else will update the numbers, someone else will fix the errors, someone else will wonder why cell J47 depends on 3 different work you'd been holding. Without noticing, this is no longer my spreadsheet. Not because the work wasn't important, not because the numbers don't matter, not because I'm abandoning anything. This is no longer my spreadsheet, because eventually everything we manage gets handed to somebody else, and that's not failure, that's succession. Cell ownership transferred, VLOOKUP problems. Someone else's adventure.
We should circle back, which sounds productive and optimistic and significantly better than admitting we have no idea what to do next. We should circle back and allow future versions of ourselves to deal with this. The question arrived unexpectedly. The answer did not. A discussion began. Ideas were shared. Concerns were raised. Several people nodded thoughtfully at concepts nobody fully understood. Confidence remains surprisingly available. We should circle back, which sounds productive and optimistic and significantly better than admitting we have no idea what to do next. We should circle back and allow future versions of ourselves to deal with this. Perhaps we need more information, more research, more alignment, more context, more stakeholders, more discussion. Or perhaps we simply need more time to hope the problem solves itself. History suggests it's worth a try. We should circle back next week, next month, next quarter. At some point, the future will arrive, and with it, a brand new opportunity to postpone things again. The funny thing about postponement is that it feels remarkably similar to progress. There's a meeting, a calendar invite, a follow-up plan, action items, documentation, everything except actual movement. We should circle back, not because delay is wisdom, not because waiting is strategy, not because every problem improves with age. We should circle back because sometimes a little distance creates clarity, and sometimes it just creates another meeting. Resolution status pending, follow-up scheduled naturally. The two-week victory lap has officially begun. The pressure is lower, the smile is wider, the future is closer. The two-week victory lap. I'm still working, but somehow everything feels different. The resignation letter has been sent. The conversation has been had. The decision has been made, and suddenly the workplace transforms into a museum of responsibilities. I used to worry about distance arrived before departure. The two-week victory lap
still working, but somehow everything feels different. People keep asking how it feels, and honestly it's confusing. I'm answering emails, attending meetings, completing projects, doing the same job I've always done. Yet somehow every task now carries a soundtrack of freedom. Perspective improves with an exit date. The 2-week victory lap, the inbox still arrives, the calendar still arrives, the request still arrives, the printer still arrives. Some traditions refuse to retire. The funny thing about notice periods is that everyone becomes friendlier. The conversations last longer, the jokes get better, the small annoyances feel smaller. It's as if the ending reminds everyone that they actually like each other the whole time. The 2-week victory lap, not because I've stopped contributing, not because I've checked out, not because the work stopped mattering. The 2-week victory lap, because after years of climbing a mountain, you're finally allowed to enjoy the view on the way down. Employment status ending, mood status surprisingly excellent.
Good luck with that, I mean that sincerely, and from a comfortable distance. Good luck with that, the challenge appears significant and no longer assigned to me. Assigned to me. There was a time when I would have cared deeply, personally, possibly too much. I would have joined calls, made spreadsheets, sent reminders, followed up, and lost sleep over outcomes I couldn't control. Those were different times, specifically last month. Good luck with that, I mean that sincerely, and from a comfortable distance. Good luck with that, the challenge appears significant and no longer assigned to me. The project remains, the deadlines remain, the complications remain, the stakeholders remain, the unexpected emergencies remain, remarkably committed to remaining. The only thing that's changed is my relationship with the situation. Perspective improves when responsibility leaves. Good luck with that, I'm rooting for you. I want you to succeed. I hope everything works out. I hope the solution appears. I hope the printer cooperates. I hope the budget survives. I hope everyone has a wonderful time. The strange thing about leaving is discovering how many problems continue existing without your involvement. The world keeps spinning, the meetings continue, the emails continue, the organization survives, and somehow that's comforting. Good luck with that, not because I don't care, not because I'm giving up, not because I'm walking away without gratitude. Good luck with that, because every chapter eventually becomes someone else's chapter. parties begin. Ownership status transferred. Stress level much improved. Already updated my LinkedIn, which feels like important context for this conversation about long-term plans and future projects. I already updated my LinkedIn. Emotionally, I'm somewhere else already. The funny thing is, nothing happened officially. No announcement, no resignation letter, no farewell speech. Just one evening I changed a few settings, updated a headline, looked at job listings, and somehow crossed a border I couldn't uncross. The body stayed, the spirit submitted notice. I already updated my LinkedIn, which feels like important context for this conversation about long-term plans and future projects. I already updated my LinkedIn. Emotionally, I'm somewhere else already. I'm still attending the meetings, answering questions, completing tasks, replying politely, and participating in discussions about next quarter, as if I haven't spent 3 consecutive lunch breaks imagining an entirely different life, technically present, strategically elsewhere. I already updated my LinkedIn. The profile picture looks optimistic. The summary section sounds ambitious, and every update feels suspiciously similar to a goodbye letter. People think leaving happens the day you resign, but I don't think that's true. I think it happens quietly, weeks earlier, when the future starts feeling more interesting than the calendar in front of you. I already updated my LinkedIn, not because I hated this place, not because everything went wrong, not because I'm running away. I already updated my LinkedIn, because sometimes the next chapter starts before the current one ends, and sometimes that's okay. Employment status complicated. Browser history very optimistic. I found the exit interview, and suddenly everyone seems interested in my opinions. It's a fascinating time to become curious. I found the exit interview. Are we being honest? Because that changes everything. For years, I've answered questions about goals, projects, performance, growth opportunities, and workplace satisfaction, with the careful precision of someone who enjoys receiving paychecks. Now, unexpectedly, the rules appear different. Freedom has a way of improving honesty. And suddenly, everyone seems interested in my opinions. It's a fascinating time to become curious. I found the exit interview. Are we being honest? Because that changes everything. The form asks what could be improved, where challenges exist, how leadership performed, and whether I'd recommend the company to a friend. These are excellent questions. I wish we'd asked them before this exact moment. timing remains an important skill. I found
The exit interview.
the survey is thorough.
The survey is thoughtful.
The survey is detailed.
The survey arrived
At a very interesting point in our relationship. The funny thing about feedback is that everyone wants it, as long as it confirms existing assumptions. Real feedback tends to arrive with surprises and occasionally a level of detail nobody requested.
I found the exit interview.
Not because,
I want revenge.
not because,
I'm keeping score.
not because
I need
the last word.
I found the exit interview.
Because if you're going to ask the question, the respectful thing is answering honestly and hoping someone listens. Feedback status submitted. Consequences, not my department. I trained. I trained 3 replacements, which sounds impressive until you learn they all ask the same questions. I answered yesterday. I trained 3 replacements, and somehow the mystery survived the explanation. I made documents, I made guides, I made diagrams, I made checklists. I explained the process step by step, twice, then 3 times, then 1 more time. For confidence, the confidence was not shared equally. Knowledge transfer is mostly hope in a business suit. I trained 3 replacements, which sounds impressive until you learn they all ask the same questions. I answered yesterday. I trained 3 replacements, and somehow the mystery survived the explanation. Where's that file? Which password is correct? Why does the system do that? Who approves this? What happens if? Excellent questions. The same excellent questions asked by every person who has ever inherited this particular problem. Some traditions refuse to die. I trained 3 replacements. The notes were detailed. The examples were detailed. The warnings were detailed. The instructions were detailed. The confusion remained remarkably independent. The funny thing about experience is that people think it can be downloaded like software, transferred like a folder, copied like a spreadsheet. But some things only make sense after you've made the same mistake personally. I trained 3 replacements, not because I'm irreplaceable, not because nobody else can do it, not because the knowledge belongs to me. I trained 3 replacements because every expert started as someone asking questions, and every answer started with patience. Documentation status comprehensive. Follow-up questions guaranteed. I've been muted this whole time, which explains several things about today's discussion and my professional reputation. I've been muted this whole time. I had thoughts, I had answers, I had no audio. The meeting began like every meeting, a greeting, an agenda, a presentation, a question directed at me. I responded immediately. confidently, clearly, passionately, to absolutely nobody. The silence felt more personal than usual. I've been muted this whole time, which explains several things about today's discussion and my professional reputation. I've been muted this whole time. I had thoughts, I had answers, I had no audio. I shared ideas, recommendations, concerns, observations, a complete solution to the problem and a warning about a future problem. Then someone finally said,
We can't hear you.
which was useful information to receive. 20 minutes later, timing remains a fascinating concept. I've been muted this whole time. The microphone worked, the camera worked, the internet worked, my confidence worked. Only one component refused to cooperate, and unfortunately, it was communication. The funny thing about being muted is how quickly it becomes a metaphor for meetings, projects, organizations, and occasionally life. Sometimes you're speaking, sometimes you're trying, sometimes you're contributing, and nobody knows you're doing it. I've been muted this whole time, not because I lacked ideas, not because I lacked effort, not because I lacked anything important to say. I've been muted this whole time. And maybe the lesson is to check the settings before questioning your entire sense of self-worth. Contribution level high, audio level 0. My last day is Friday, which has dramatically improved my mood. Every inconvenience feels temporary. Every problem feels manageable. My last day is Friday, and suddenly the future looks remarkably friendly. The calendar says 5 more days, 4 more days, 3 more days, 2 more days, 1 more day. I've become unexpectedly interested in counting. For someone who normally avoids mathematics, whenever possible, the numbers are small and getting smaller. My last day is Friday, which has dramatically improved my mood. Every inconvenience feels temporary. Every problem feels manageable. My last day is Friday, and suddenly the future looks remarkably friendly. A meeting got canceled and I celebrated. A software issue appeared, and I shrugged. An urgent request arrived, and somehow it felt less urgent. I've discovered that deadlines lose a surprising amount of power when they stop following you home. Perspective arrived right on schedule. My last day is Friday. The inbox remains, the projects remain, the confusion remains, the printer remains. Some things simply cannot be fixed in a single week. The strange thing about endings is that they're also evidence that something happened. You were here, you did the work, you learned things, you met people, you solved problems, and now a chapter is ending because it existed in the first place. My last day is Friday, not because I stopped caring, not because I'm running away, not because the journey wasn't worthwhile. My last day is Friday because morning shifts, very few. Weekend energy, extremely high. Please remove me from this distribution list. I appreciate being included, but I believe our journey together has reached its natural conclusion. Please remove me from this distribution list. Respectfully, I no longer need 37 emails per day. It started innocently, one notification, one update, one announcement, one helpful reminder. Then somehow the situation evolved into receiving messages about departments I've never worked in, projects I've never seen, and problems I didn't create. The inbox expanded beyond its original habitat. This distribution list. I appreciate being included, but I believe our journey together has reached its natural conclusion. Please remove me from this distribution list. Respectfully, I no longer need 37 emails per day. Every morning I discover new opportunities to delete things, meeting recaps, policy updates, system notifications, quarterly summaries, and a fascinating discussion about a printer located 3 states away. I wish them well. Not every story requires an audience. Please remove me from this distribution list. The information is valuable. The information is important. The information is relevant to somebody, and that somebody is almost certainly not me. The funny thing about leaving is realizing how many things you thought mattered only mattered because they arrived in your inbox once the email stopped. Entire categories of concern simply vanish. Please remove me from this distribution list. Not because I'm angry, not because I'm bitter, not because I don't care. Please remove me from this distribution list, because I'm learning a beautiful new phrase, and that phrase is not my problem anymore. Email volume declining. Inner peace increasing. Suddenly everything is optional. The urgency disappeared. The pressure disappeared. The panic disappeared. And honestly, I'm starting to suspect some of it was voluntary. Suddenly everything is optional, and it's a beautiful new perspective. Yesterday an email arrived marked urgent, important, high priority, immediate action required. And for the first time in years I looked at it calmly, like a wildlife documentary, observing something in its natural habitat. The situation remained surprisingly survivable. Suddenly everything is optional. The urgency disappeared. The pressure disappeared. The panic disappeared. And honestly, I'm starting to suspect some of it was voluntary. Suddenly everything
beautiful new perspective. Would I like to join that meeting? Maybe not. Would I like to volunteer for that project? Probably not. Would I like to spend my remaining days creating new responsibilities? Let's not ruin a good thing. Boundaries become easier with an expiration date. Suddenly everything is optional. The requests continue, the reminders continue, the escalations continue, but their influence has weakened considerably. The funny thing about freedom is discovering how many rules were never rules, just expectations, agreements, habits, and fears quietly wearing name tags. Suddenly everything is optional. Not because nothing matters, not because I'm irresponsible, not because the work lacks value. Suddenly everything is optional because I'm remembering that I always had more choices than I thought. And that's a lesson worth taking with me. Compliance level, flexible, personal freedom, unexpectedly high.
The printer wins again. I had a plan, I had a process. I followed instructions, I did everything right. The printer wins again, and honestly, at this point, I have to respect it. The task seems simple: print the document, review the document, sign the document, finish the task, move on. A straightforward mission with a clear objective. Then the printer became aware of my intentions. That's when things changed. The printer wins again. I had a plan, I had a process. I followed instructions, I did everything right. The printer wins again, and honestly, at this point, I have to respect it. Paper jam, no paper jam, offline, online, connected, disconnected, ready, not ready. An error message appeared briefly, then disappeared before anyone could read it. An impressive display of confidence. The machine remains committed to mystery. The printer wins again. I've restarted systems, checked settings, updated drivers, consulted experts, and developed theories that sound unreasonable until you've worked with printers. The funny thing about technology is that people assume the newer it gets, the easier it becomes. Yet somehow the printer remains a powerful reminder that humanity has limits, and some of those limits are wireless. The printer wins again, not because I'm unqualified, not because I didn't try, not because the challenge was fair. The printer wins again because every workplace needs one mystery that nobody solves, and apparently this is ours. Document status pending. Printer status victorious. This meeting could have been an email, a short email, a very short email, potentially a single sentence. This meeting could have been an email, and yet here we are together for reasons nobody fully understands. The invitation arrived 3 days ago with 8 attendees, 4 agenda items, 2 attachments, and an optimism that now seems historically significant. The meeting began with technical difficulties and a conversation about the weather. Momentum left the building remarkably early. This meeting could have been an email, a short email, a very short email, potentially a single sentence. This meeting could have been an email, and yet here we are together for reasons nobody fully understands. We reviewed the previous meeting, prepared for the next meeting, discussed scheduling a future meeting to determine whether another meeting would be helpful at this point. The meetings appear to be reproducing without supervision. Nature is amazing. Sometimes this meeting could have been an email, possibly a bullet point, possibly a calendar note, possibly a thumbs up emoji. The communication options were extensive. The strange thing is nobody wants to be here. The presenter wants to leave. The attendees wanna leave. The person sharing slides definitely wants to leave. We're all united by a common dream of ending this call. This meeting could have been an email, but maybe that's not the point. Maybe workplaces need traditions, and this is ours. A group of adults gathering together to slowly discover information that was available yesterday. This meeting could have been an email, and someday it finally will be. Key takeaway: unclear. Action items. Pending. Pending.
I have questions about leadership, respectful questions, professional questions, questions that began as curiosity and slowly evolved into something else. I have questions about leadership, and unfortunately, some of them have follow-up questions. When I first arrived, everything seemed very intentional. There were plans, strategies, roadmaps, vision statements, objectives, and enough confidence to convince me someone definitely knew what was happening. It was an inspiring theory at the time. I have questions about leadership, respectful questions, professional questions, questions that began as curiosity and slowly evolved into something else. I have questions about leadership, and unfortunately, some of them have follow-up questions. A decision was made, then reversed, then adjusted, then clarified, then reconsidered, then revisited, then discussed in a meeting to determine why the original decision had been made. The journey was educational. Consistency remains an ambitious goal. I have questions about leadership, not accusations, not complaints, not declarations, just observations that seem difficult to ignore. The funny thing about authority is that from far away it looks like certainty. Then you get closer and discover most leadership involves incomplete information, limited options, competing priorities, and doing your best while everyone watches. I have and somehow that's comforting. Questions asked, several questions answered. Let's keep moving. I know where everything is, which would have been useful information to request several months ago. I know where everything is, and suddenly everyone seems very interested. Where's the file? I know. Where's the template? I know. Who approves this? I know. Why does that process work like that? That's a longer story, but yes, I know that too. Experience accumulates in strange places. I know where everything is, which would have been useful information to request several months ago. I know where everything is, and suddenly everyone seems very interested. For years, this knowledge was completely ordinary. A folder here, a document there, a shortcut, a workaround, a contact person, a backup contact person, and one extremely important file with an extremely unhelpful name. It all seemed normal at the time. Familiarity disguises value. I know where everything is. The information existed. The information was available. The information was waiting patiently for somebody to ask about it. The funny thing about institutional knowledge is that nobody notices it until it starts leaving. Then suddenly, the person who knows things becomes remarkably popular. For approximately 2 weeks and several panicked emails. I know where everything is. Not because I'm a genius. Not because I planned it. Not because I expected it to matter this much. I know where everything is, because every year you solve a few problems, learn a few shortcuts, remember a few details, and eventually you become the map. Knowledge status extensive. Timing of requests interesting. I stopped caring at lunch. Not dramatically, not intentionally, not as part of a larger plan. I stopped caring at lunch, somewhere between a sandwich and an email. Something changed. The morning started normally, deadlines, meetings, updates, requests, the usual collection of urgent situations that apparently could not wait. Another hour, I nodded politely, participated professionally, and opened my lunch container. That's when the timeline took an unexpected turn. I stopped caring at lunch. Not dramatically, not intentionally, not as part of a larger plan. I stopped caring at lunch, somewhere between a sandwich and an email. Something changed. The message arrived marked important, high priority. but ultimately beyond my control. Perspective arrived without a calendar invite. I stopped caring at lunch. The problems remained, the meetings remained, the expectations remained. The entire workplace continued operating exactly as before. Only my emotional investment failed to renew itself. The funny thing about breaking points is that people imagine a dramatic moment, a speech, an argument, a final straw. Sometimes it's just a random Tuesday and the realization that you've been carrying more responsibility than you were required to carry. I stopped caring at lunch, not because the work was worthless, not because the people were difficult, not because everything went wrong. I stopped caring at lunch because eventually you discover the difference between doing your best and carrying the weight of everything. They're not the same thing. Time of incident, 12:17 p.m. Stress level, left with a salad. It was the culture, not the coffee, not the snacks, not the occasional free pizza. It was the culture, and eventually that became impossible to ignore. At first, everything looked fine. The mission sounded good. The people seemed nice. The office looked modern. The values were framed on the wall in attractive fonts. There were newsletters and presentations about teamwork. The brochure was excellent. It was the culture, not the coffee, not the snacks, not the occasional free pizza. It was the culture, and eventually that became impossible to ignore. The policies mattered, the benefits mattered, the salary mattered, but every day was shaped by something else. The way people spoke, the way people listened, the way problems were handled, the way mistakes were treated, the things nobody wrote down, but everybody learned. The unwritten rules wrote the loudest story. It was the culture. The meetings reflected it. The culture. The decisions reflected it. The culture. The promotions reflected it. The conversations reflected it. Eventually, everything reflected it. The funny thing about culture is that people talk about it like it's a strategy, a document, a committee, a program. But culture is mostly what happens when nobody is watching, and what gets rewarded when everyone is. It was the culture, not because anyone intended harm, not because anyone was a villain, not because the company lacked good people. It was the culture because small habits repeated long enough become an environment, and environments shape everything inside them. Root cause, complicated, free pizza, not the issue. My calendar is finally empty. No invitations, no reminders, no scheduling conflicts, no color-coded emergencies. silence is beautiful. There was a time when every hour belonged to something, a meeting, a follow-up, a check-in, a sync, a planning session about another session that hadn't happened yet. The future was booked months in advance. Apparently, so was my stress. My calendar is finally empty. No invitations, no reminders, no scheduling conflicts, no color-coded emergencies. My calendar is finally empty, and the silence is beautiful. I opened the app out of habit, expecting obligations, deadlines, and demands. Instead, I found a wide-open afternoon, just sitting there, waiting like a nature preserve, returning to health after years of development. Freedom looked unexpectedly available. My calendar is finally empty. No urgent requests, no recurring meetings, no mysterious appointments that nobody remembers scheduling. Just open space and unlimited possibilities. The funny thing about being busy is that you start believing every minute needs a purpose, a goal, a deliverable, a measurable outcome. Then one day you have free time and remember that existing also counts. My calendar is finally empty, not because I became unimportant, not because nobody needs me, not because the world stopped moving. My calendar is finally empty because for the first time in a long time, my time belongs to me. And that's worth protecting. Availability wide open. Meeting request denied.
Nobody knows what I actually do, including people I've worked with for years. Nobody knows what I actually do, and honestly, the mystery has become part of the job. I attend meetings, answer questions, solve problems, send updates, review requests, and occasionally perform tasks that sound fictional when described out loud. I've stopped trying to explain them. Some knowledge resists translation. Nobody knows what I actually do, including people I've worked with for years. Nobody knows what I actually do, and honestly, the mystery has become part of the job. If I'm unavailable, people become concerned. If I'm present, people seem relieved. If I fix something, everyone says excellent. If I ask what was broken, nobody is completely sure, including me. Sometimes the system works, and that's enough. Nobody knows what I actually do. My title is vague, my responsibilities are flexible, and my calendar contains activities that would require several diagrams to understand. The funny thing about expertise is that eventually you stop noticing how specialized your knowledge became. You forget that other people don't spend every day inside the same puzzles, using the same language, solving the same problems. Nobody knows what I actually do, not because the complicated. Replacement strategy. Good luck.
See you on LinkedIn, which is the professional version of saying goodbye without actually leaving completely. See you on LinkedIn, where we will continue to support each other from a safe distance. The farewell messages have started arriving, the kind words, the memories, the congratulations, the promises to stay in touch, which everyone means sincerely at the moment, and many people will actually do, just probably not in person. See you on LinkedIn, which is the professional version of saying goodbye without actually leaving completely. See you on LinkedIn, where we will continue to support each other from a safe distance. We'll celebrate promotions, new jobs, work anniversaries, career milestones, and achievements by pressing a button labeled like, occasionally commenting congratulations with 3 exclamation points. The modern workplace has invented its own version of postcards. Networking evolved in interesting ways. See you on LinkedIn. The connection remains, the relationship remains, the history remains, the memories remain. Only the organization has changed. The funny thing about careers is that paths keep crossing. People leave, people return, people reappear. Years later, at different companies, different titles, different chapters. The professional world is much smaller than it looks. See you on LinkedIn, not because work is everything, not because every connection must be useful, not because relationships are transactions. On LinkedIn, because the people were always the best part of the job, and some connections deserve to continue long after the email account expires. Employment status ended. Connection request accepted.